I can pinpoint the moment my life stopped feeling familiar. It wasn't dramatic at first. No screaming matches, no slammed doors, no secret letters found under a mattress. It started with a notification. Just a single ding on my phone during lunch break. I was sitting in my car outside a deli, half a turkey sandwich in one hand, scrolling through Instagram with the other, *ling time before heading back to work. That's when it popped up. Carly Brady tagged you in a post. Strange. My wife wasn't big on social media. In fact, she barely used it. She said it was all noise and nonsense, and I believed her. I tapped the notification without thinking. That's when everything shifted. The video opened with the sound of waves crashing. It was bright sunlight reflecting off the ocean. You could hear seagulls, the breeze, and then the camera turned slightly. There she was. Carly. Hair blowing in the wind, barefoot in the sand, wearing a sundress I hadn't seen before. She looked carefree, younger almost, holding a fruity drink in one hand and laughing. Then it happened. A man's voice, close to the mic, clearly amused. Carly. She turned toward him, smiling in a way that made my stomach twist. She looked so alive, so relaxed. The kind of smile you give someone who knows you in *mately. I froze. The clip ended there, cutting off before I could process what I just seen. I stared at my screen, trying to make sense of it. There were no captions. No emojis. Just a casual beach video. Except Carly wasn't supposed to be near a beach. She was supposed to be 2 hours inland, attending a corporate summit in Raleigh, 3 days of seminars, networking mixers, and panel discussions. That's what she told me when she packed her suitcase on Monday morning, her tone flat and distracted like it always was lately. I felt my throat dry out. The video wasn't old, I could tell. The lighting was the same as today's weather, her hairstyle was new, and that dress definitely wasn't from years ago. Plus, the account name the video came from wasn't hers. It was someone named at Beach Blonde 89, no profile picture, private account. But I could see the video. Probably because of the tag. I stared at it for another minute before texting her. Hey, where are you right now? No response. 5 minutes passed. I called her. No answer. By the time she returned my call, I had replayed that video a dozen times, memorizing every second of it. Her voice on the other end was cheery but forced. Hey babe. What's up? I asked her again. Where was she? Why had I just seen her on the beach when she was supposed to be in Raleigh? Oh my God, she said with a laugh that didn't quite land. That video? No, that's old. Like, a couple years old. Haley posted it as a joke. You know how dumb she can be sometimes. She kept talking quickly like she was trying to fill the space before I could ask anything else. I had no idea she tagged you. So embarrassing. I'll ask her to take it down. I didn't say anything for a second. I just listened to her tone. Something was off, flat, overcompensating. Carly wasn't a good liar. That used to be something I loved about her. I thought Haley didn't go on that trip with you, I said, keeping my voice neutral. A pause. She didn't, Carly said. But she had the video on her phone. From before. I don't even remember when it was taken. That made even less sense. After we hung up, I stared out the windshield for a long time. My half-eaten sandwich sat untouched on the seat beside me. In the background, my phone pinged again. The video had been deleted. By the time I got home that night, she had changed her social media passwords. All of them. Even her phone had a new passcode. She said she was being more careful after the tagging mishap. Too many creeps out there, she said, avoiding my eyes as she said it. That night, as she got ready for bed, she acted like nothing had happened. As if the entire incident was just some silly misunderstanding, like I had imagined the whole thing. She even joked about it, called it our first digital mystery. But her jokes were hollow and her smile didn't reach her eyes. Something inside me shifted. Subtle but irreversible. Like a quiet snap of tension in a rope that had been pulled too tight for too long. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail. The way she looked at the man behind the camera. The beach I'd never seen. The fact that she had used old video as an excuse, then locked down every way I could confirm it. She never once asked me how I found the clip. That bothered me more than anything. A week earlier, I might have brushed it off. But that week? That week, I started remembering things I had buried. Times she turned her phone face down when I entered the room. That weekend she canceled our cabin trip with my family at the last minute. The girls' night out she claimed ended early, though she didn't get home until 2 a.m. Back then, I chalked it up to stress, to burnout, to Carly just needing space. But the truth was simpler and so much harder. Something was happening. I didn't know what it was yet, not fully. But I could feel it. And once you feel that shift, That eerie, sinking sense that someone close to you isn't who you thought they were. It never really goes away. You start watching, listening, not out of paranoia, but out of survival. You pay attention to silences, to glances, to patterns. Because sometimes the first red flag isn't a confrontation or a fight. Sometimes it's a laugh on a beach in a city she never told you she was in. The week after the video, things changed, not loudly, not visibly to the outside world, but in quiet, undeniable ways. I'd always believed that trust, once cracked, could be patched. But now I saw how easily doubt could flood through even the smallest fracture. Every time Carly's phone buzzed, I found myself watching her face for a reaction. She'd glance at it, her expression unreadable, and then casually set it face down. Always face down. She used to leave her phone all over the house, on the kitchen counter, the bathroom sink, the back porch during wine nights. Now, it was either in her back pocket or right next to her, even when she showered. She claimed it was because she started using a new health tracking app. I didn't argue, but I didn't believe her either. Things that once felt normal now made my chest tighten. She started working late more often, sometimes claiming there were surprise deadlines or last-minute meetings. But there was always a delay in her explanation. That half-second pause before she spoke. The way someone lies when they're tired and not quite fast enough to sound convincing. I told myself I was overthinking things. Maybe I was projecting. Maybe it was just stress from work or from being stuck in a routine. I clung to those maybes like a life raft. But the pattern was there. It just kept building. She stopped wanting to make plans, weekend getaways, family birthdays, even small things like dinner with friends. Everything was too much right now. Carly, who used to love booking Airbnbs and scrolling through hiking spots, now shrugged when I asked if she wanted to get out of town. One Saturday, my cousin invited us to his engagement party. I told Carly weeks in advance. She said she was looking forward to it. That morning, she said she had a migraine. Told me to go alone and take pictures. When I came back, she was sitting on the back deck with a glass of wine. No sign of discomfort. She said the headache passed. I nodded, said nothing, but I noticed the glass was half full. The wine bottle was in the kitchen. Cork already popped when I got home. She didn't even bother to make the lie consistent. And then there were the little physical things. I remember one morning she left her coat on the couch before heading into the shower. I picked it up to hang it, and a strand of hair slipped off the collar, long, blonde, and curled at the end. Carly had short, straight brown hair. Always had. I stared at that strand for a long time. I didn't keep it. I didn't confront her. I just let it drift from my hand to the trash like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. The clues weren't dramatic, but they were consistent. Like the time I found a receipt for a sushi place across town tucked into our shared glove box. She hates sushi. Always has. I asked her about it later, and she said she grabbed takeout with a coworker who loves that place. I wanted to ask if she tried anything herself, but I didn't. I didn't want to hear her lie. Then there were the texts I wasn't meant to see. One night, she was in the kitchen while her phone buzzed on the couch. Just once. A preview message slid across the screen. I didn't even try to look. The name just flashed there, Nate, followed by a single heart emoji. When she came back in, I asked who Nate was, playing it casual. She said he was a guy from her team. You'd like him, she added, brushing it off. I bet I wouldn't. From that point on, I couldn't stop connecting the dots. The late nights. The sudden interest in fitness classes she never actually talked about. The excuse that she left her gym bag at work. Twice. The way she smelled different sometimes, like cologne I didn't recognize or hotel shampoo. One night, I tested something. I mentioned an event I knew she hadn't told me about. A made-up dinner invitation from her old college friend, Maya. I said, Maya texted me. She said you're going to her birthday thing next Friday? Carly didn't blink. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention it. Just a small thing. There was no birthday, no plan. But she nodded, smiled, and adjusted her hair like it was the most normal thing in the world. That scared me more than anything else. I stopped sleeping well. I'd wake up at 2 a.m., roll over, and stare at the wall while Carly breathed steadily beside me. I'd wonder if she was dreaming about Nate, or someone else, Or maybe dreaming of escape. I used to watch her sleep and feel peaceful. Now it just felt like a countdown. I didn't tell anyone, not at first. I didn't want pity or unsolicited advice. I didn't want to hear people say, maybe you're just imagining things. Or worse, maybe you drove her away. I didn't want to be the guy who got cheated on. Not out loud. Not yet. But inside I knew. Something had ended between us long before I saw that beach video. I just hadn't realized it. Or maybe I didn't want to. We'd had our issues, sure. No marriage is perfect. There were fights, dry spells, seasons of silence. But there had always been a thread holding us together. Something unspoken, a sense of shared life, of commitment. Lately, it felt like she'd severed that thread and was pretending it was still there just to keep up appearances. What made it worse was how kind she still tried to be. Some nights, she'd bring home takeout, ask me about my day, laugh at my dumb jokes, sit beside me on the couch, knees touching, while we watched reruns of shows we used to love. But even in those moments, I felt like I was watching a stranger try to mimic someone I used to know. One night, as we sat watching TV, I reached for her hand. Just instinct. But she flinched just slightly, almost imperceptible. Like a reflex she couldn't help. She caught herself and laced her fingers through mine, smiled, and asked, "What's up with you tonight?" I didn't answer, because I didn't have the words for what I was feeling. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I wasn't heartbroken. Not fully. I was stuck in between, haunted by a slow unraveling. The kind of grief that creeps in before the impact. Like hearing the cracking ice beneath your feet, knowing it'll give, and still not moving. Carly didn't need to confess. She already had 100 different ways. The woman who used to share everything with me was now a ghost of herself. Or maybe I was the ghost, haunting a marriage that no longer existed, waiting for someone to tell me it was time to leave. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew one thing for certain. The pattern wasn't going to stop. It was going to end. And when it did, I'd either have to face it or get crushed by it. I didn't go looking for proof, not at first. For a long time, I lived in this strange in-between state, where I knew the truth but wasn't ready to face it head-on. Some part of me still clung to the possibility that it was all a misunderstanding, that I was just insecure, paranoid, wrong. But the signs didn't go away. They only got sharper, more deliberate, more cruel in a quiet way. That's what led to the laptop. It was a Thursday morning. Carly had left early for what she said was a corporate retreat. 3 days of strategy meetings and bonding activities at a lakeside resort an hour out of town. She packed the night before, fast and methodically. No need for help. When I offered to drive her, she waved me off, said she was carpooling with coworkers. She kissed me goodbye like everything was fine. Routine. A goodbye with no weight behind it. I noticed the laptop on the hallway bench maybe 10 minutes after she left. It was her work laptop, or at least that's what I assumed. Black case. Stickered. Locked with a simple password. One she'd given me months ago when she needed me to print something while she was out. I didn't mean to open it. I told myself I was just going to plug it in, keep it charged in case she realized it was missing and needed me to bring it out. But the screen lit up the second I opened the lid. Already logged in. A browser tab was left open. Chrome with multiple tabs. I hovered my hand over the trackpad, hesitating. Then I clicked. The open page was a messaging app. Not email. Not anything tied to her work. It was some kind of encrypted chat platform. And the name at the top of the conversation made my throat tighten. Nate. The first thing I saw was a photo. It was taken at night. Carly was in a hotel bathrobe, sitting cross-legged on a patio chair. You could see the ocean behind her, waves crashing under moonlight. She looked peaceful and happy. She'd sent it to Nate with the caption, "Wish you were here already. The view's perfect." That was 3 days ago. She was supposed to be home. I didn't even realize I'd started scrolling until I saw full conversations. The kind of messages that didn't need decoding. There was no gray area, no way to misread what was going on. "Carly? He keeps asking if I'm okay. I want to scream. I just want to be with you and not pretend anymore. Nate. You will. Just a little longer. We're almost there. Carly. He noticed the video. I told him it was old. He bought it, I think. Nate. LOL. Poor guy. That last one made me sit back in my chair like I'd been slapped. There were more. Dozens of them. Discussions about when they'd see each other again, how to keep things quiet, jokes about my cluelessness. One exchange was just pictures, her in different outfits, apparently deciding which to wear for their weekend away. I clicked a link in one of Nate's messages. It opened to a photo album private hosted on some obscure cloud service. The pictures were worse. The beach. The drinks. Carly in that same yellow sundress she'd told me months ago was donated during spring cleaning. Laughing with Nate. Holding his hand. In one *T, they were standing on a hotel balcony, his arm around her waist, her head resting on his shoulder. The same shoulder I used to carry her on during piggyback races in our first apartment. It wasn't just the Macy. It was the care. The comfort. The quiet familiarity. This wasn't a fling. This was a life she'd built alongside ours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, my eyes dry, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. The screen blurred slightly. My hands rested on the keyboard like I didn't know what to do with them anymore. Eventually, I closed the laptop. I didn't touch anything else. Didn't snoop deeper. I didn't need more. What I needed was to see it for myself. So I got in my car. The retreat hotel was only an hour away, nestled in a small oceanside town. It looked like something out of a travel brochure: wooden decks, sea breeze, smiling staff handing out flutes of champagne. I pulled into a spot across the street and waited. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Closure, maybe? A final blow to whatever hope still clung to my ribs. Then there she was. Late afternoon sun catching in her hair, Carly walked out of the hotel, her hand clasped in someone else's. Nate? Taller than me. Broad-shouldered. He was wearing boat shoes and that smirk I'd seen in the photos. Carly was wearing the yellow dress. She once told me she didn't feel pretty in yellow. That it washed her out. I spent a whole summer trying to convince her otherwise. Bought her sunflowers. Sent her poems. She never wore yellow again. But here she was, laughing, wearing that same dress as she walked hand in hand with the man she'd shared a second life with. I didn't get out of the car. Didn't call her name. I just watched. For a long time, I thought I'd want to confront her, demand an explanation, make a scene, get the apology I'd earned. But as I watched her tilt her head and laugh at something Nate said, I realized I didn't want any of that. I just wanted out. So I took out my phone. I pressed record. 15 seconds. That's all. Her walking with him. Her laugh. The yellow dress. Then I stopped the video, put the phone down, and drove away. I didn't look back. Didn't wonder if she saw me. I knew she didn't. She was too busy living a story I was never invited into. By the time I got home, I knew what I had to do. There would be no fight. No dramatic confrontation. No second chances. She'd made her decision. Now it was time for me to make mine. There's a moment when heartbreak hardens into resolve. When the endless questioning, the looping of what-ifs and maybes just stops. For me, it happened the second I turned off the ignition after driving back from the hotel. I sat there, watching the shadows of the tree in our driveway sway across the windshield, and realized I didn't feel devastated anymore. I felt done. Not angry. Not numb. Just finished. Carly had made her choice. Over and over. I'd been patient, blind, forgiving, maybe too forgiving. But that ended now. I wasn't going to rage or scream. I wasn't going to beg for the truth. I already had it recorded on my phone, documented across chats and receipts and her own absent eyes. So I started planning. That night, while the house was still, I went room by room and took stock of everything I would need to leave without looking back. I started with the files, tax returns, property records, joint account statements. I copied them onto a secure drive. Then I took photos of receipts and expenses she probably didn't know I knew about: hotel stays, out-of-town card swipes, recurring Venmo payments labeled lunch steaming bowl from someone named Nate. After that, I walked through the bedroom. She'd left behind a charger and a scrunchie on her side of the bed. That side used to smell like lavender and safety. Now it smelled like a stranger. I opened her closet. Half of it was empty. She'd taken just enough for her corporate retreat, but left behind the essentials. I found the box she stored under the bed with old photos and letters and pulled out the one I'd written during my surgery recovery a few years ago. It was a rambling mess, emotional, unguarded, full of gratitude and fear. I almost threw it away. Instead, I left it out on the dresser. Let her find it. By morning, I'd started making calls. The real estate agent I contacted was efficient and discreet. I told her I needed the house listed quickly but quietly, no signs, no social media blasts. Just paperwork, showings, and an exit strategy. She understood immediately. I transferred most of my savings to a new account and began the paperwork for separating joint assets. Then I found a lawyer who specialized in high-discretion divorce filings. She asked one question after I showed her the evidence. Do you want to hurt her or just leave clean? Clean, I said. But I want her to understand she lost something permanent. That afternoon, I drafted the divorce agreement. Nothing brutal. Nothing petty. Just clear, calculated lines that divided our life in half and removed my heart from the equation. Then I packed. I didn't take everything. Just the things that mattered. My clothes, my books, the tools my dad gave me when I first moved out, the watch my mom bought me for our wedding day. I took the record player but left the vinyls. We collected those together and they didn't sound right without her voice humming along. In the kitchen, I left one thing behind, her favorite coffee mug. The chipped white one with the tiny sunflower on the handle. It was always the last thing she touched before leaving the house in the morning. I cleaned the counter. Placed the mug beside a sealed envelope. Inside were two things, the signed divorce agreement and a printed timeline. Dates, times, messages, locations. No commentary. Just facts. The last page read, "You knew I saw you. And still, you chose him. So I'm choosing peace. Goodbye." I left it on her pillow. Before walking out the door, I placed one final item on the hallway table, the house key. I turned the lock, stepped into the quiet morning air, and didn't look back. I moved into a short-term rental cabin about 2 hours away, a quiet spot my aunt had always used when she needed space. It smelled like pinewood and thyme. No Wi-Fi. No neighbors. Just birds, silence, and an old fireplace that worked when you kicked it twice on the left side. The first few nights were strange. I kept reaching for my phone, expecting a storm of calls or texts. There were a few missed calls, all from Carly. No voicemails. Just her name repeating like a ghost knocking on the door. I didn't answer. I started walking every morning. Long loops through the woods, coffee thermos in hand, listening to the wind instead of music. I couldn't write. Couldn't sleep much. But I could breathe. For the first time in months, I could breathe. About a week in, I got an email from the realtor. A cash offer on the house, full asking. I signed the papers that night, digitally, watching my signature appear on the screen like the final step in some quiet ritual. I didn't tell anyone where I was, not at first. I needed time to become someone again outside of her. I read, I fixed a broken chair on the porch, I listened to the radio at night. I let the anger rise when it needed to, and then I let it fall again. It wasn't a revenge story. It was a recovery. One night, I made a list. Not of her faults or my regrets, but of things I wanted to remember, truths that would anchor me when the weight of what happened started to twist my memory. She didn't trip into this. She walked. I gave her every chance to be honest. She chose silence. Love doesn't live in secrets. Leaving wasn't cruel. Staying would have been. I mattered even if she forgot how much. I folded that list and kept it in my wallet. I knew she'd come looking eventually. Maybe not physically, but through messages, emails, whatever means felt safe and distant. That's how guilt works. It doesn't scream. It sends quiet pings into the void and hopes for an echo. When she returned, the house was already empty. The locks had been changed. Her name was off the lease. Her car, once jointly owned, was now deregistered and hers alone. Everything was clean. Every detail checked. There was nothing left to argue over. I imagined her walking through the front door, seeing the hollow walls, the missing photos, the mug on the counter. I wondered if she read the timeline all the way through. If she traced her steps back and realized how obvious it had all been. I'll never know. She never wrote back. Not then. And I didn't wait for her to. Because this wasn't about her anymore. This was about the man I became the moment I decided that dignity mattered more than closure. That peace was louder than revenge. That my future deserved to begin with stillness, not noise. And in that quiet cabin, with a fire crackling and my name finally my own again, I found the space to heal. Not because she was gone, but because I had finally left too. I wasn't keeping track of how long I'd been gone, not exactly. Days blurred together in the cabin. I measured time by how much firewood I had left or when the creek out back started to freeze over at night. It was peaceful if lonely, and that loneliness wasn't all bad. Sometimes being alone is what reminds you who you are. So when she showed up, it felt like a crack in that stillness. It was just past noon. I was out back, sanding down the old porch railing when I heard tires crunching on gravel. My first thought was that the realtor had sent someone, or maybe my aunt's neighbor was dropping by. But then I saw the car. Her car. The little blue Civic she'd refused to trade in because it had history. I stood still as it rolled to a stop. She stepped out slowly, holding something pressed to her chest. It was a hardcover book, one I hadn't seen in years. My copy of Into the Wild, the one with the water-damaged spine and my name scribbled inside in Sharpie. I'd forgotten it existed. Carly looked different. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was tied back. She had a jacket that looked a size too big, and her eyes, they weren't red from crying. They were dull. Like someone who hadn't been sleeping much. "Hey," she said. I didn't answer. I didn't move. She walked toward the porch and paused at the steps. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either. I just leaned the sander against the railing and sat down in one of the deck chairs. She sat across from me, holding the book in her lap like it was something fragile. "I found this when I was packing," she said. There was a letter in it. My stomach tightened. I'd written a lot of letters in the past, some meant to be read, others not. "From when?" I asked. "After your surgery," she said. "You were still recovering. You wrote it in the margins." She opened the book to the inside cover and held it out to me. I didn't take it. I remembered now, rambling words about how scared I'd been, how much I relied on her, how grateful I was, how much I believed in us. "I didn't remember it," she said quietly. "Not until I read it again." We sat in silence for a long time. The wind picked up and rustled the bare trees around us. "I owe you the truth," she said finally. "I already know the truth," I replied. My voice was flat but calm. Too calm. "I saw you. I saw the messages. I saw everything." "I know," she said, her voice barely audible. "But not all of it." She looked down at the book, then back at me. "You think it started with Nate," she said. "It didn't." I didn't flinch. I expected this. Somehow I knew there was more. She drew a breath. "It started 2 years ago. Around the time you got sick. I never said it out loud, but I started to disappear. Inside myself. After your surgery, when you were recovering and everything felt heavy, I couldn't handle it." "You didn't have to handle it alone," I said. She nodded. "But it felt like I did. And that's not your fault. That's on me. I didn't talk to you. I shut down. I told myself it was temporary, but..." She trailed off. I waited. "There was someone else," she said. "Before Nate. A coworker. It wasn't serious. It didn't last. But it happened." I stared past her at the tree line. The revelation didn't hit like a punch. It was quieter than that, like another small stone added to the weight on my chest. "When?" I asked. She hesitated. "The night you made the big dinner. Remember? You'd been planning it for weeks." I did remember. I cooked for 3 hours, wore the shirt she always complimented, lit candles. She said she had a headache halfway through and went to bed early. I thought it was stress. I'd lit candles for a ghost. I told myself it was a mistake, she continued. And I tried to come back from it. I really did. But I never dealt with why I did it. I just buried it. And eventually, the distance between us became the only thing I recognized. "You didn't just cheat," I said. "You abandoned me while pretending you were still here." "I know," she said, wiping at her eyes. "I've been in therapy since I left the house. I've been trying to understand who I became. It's not an excuse. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I needed you to hear it. From me." "What does Nate know?" I asked. She laughed bitterly. "Nothing. He thinks he was the beginning. He thinks he's special." "And is he?" She looked up at me. "No. Not anymore." I didn't respond. The silence between us said everything. "I'm moving," she added. "To a different city. New job. Off social media. I need to disappear for a while." I nodded. "Probably for the best." She stood slowly, brushing dust from her coat. "I don't expect anything. I don't want to interfere with your peace. I wanted to look you in the eye and tell you what I never had the courage to say before." I finally met her gaze. She looked hollow. Not in a manipulative way. Not in a performative way. Just empty. Like someone who had finally realized the depth of the damage she caused. "Thank you," I said. And I meant it. Not because I forgave her. Not because it fixed anything. But because honesty, even late, is still better than a lifetime of lies. She set the book down on the porch table. "Goodbye, Austin." She turned and walked to her car. I watched her drive away without standing. When the sound of the engine faded, I looked down at the book. My handwriting in the margins, messy and uneven. Words from a time I believed in her without question. Words I now realized had been read too late. I stayed there until the sky turned orange and the shadows stretched long across the cabin floor. She was gone again. Only this time she wasn't the only one who had moved on. I thought her confession would be the end of it, that I'd heard everything I needed to hear. But life has a way of letting the truth bleed out in layers, one cut at a time. A week after Carly left the cabin, I got a message from an unknown number. "Hi, my name is Michelle. You don't know me, but I was with Nate for 4 years. I think we need to talk." I stared at it for a long time, debating whether to reply. Eventually, I typed one word, "Why?" She responded almost instantly. "Because you deserve to know what he did. To both of us." We spoke the next evening. Michelle's voice was steady, but there was a sharpness to it. She wasn't calling to vent, she had a purpose. She told me that Carly wasn't Nate's first affair. Far from it. Michelle had found dozens of messages, photos, and hidden folders on his phone. He had a pattern, targeting women in vulnerable situations, coaxing them into secret relationships, and then recording them without consent. My chest tightened. "What do you mean, recording?" Michelle hesitated. Then she said, "He has videos. Of you too. Of Carly. One of them is online now." She begged him to take it down. He refused. I felt sick. Not angry. Not shocked. Just sick. Carly, for all her betrayal, had been caught in someone else's game. She was still responsible, but I couldn't ignore the bigger picture, how someone like Nate could manipulate, isolate, and destroy with a smile. Michelle sent me *TS, forums, timestamps, usernames. One thread had hundreds of comments. The clip wasn't explicit, but it was unmistakably Carly. Laughing. Drinking. The yellow dress. Someone in the comments asked, "Isn't she married?" I didn't know what to feel. Vindicated? Humiliated? Protective? She betrayed me, yes. But Nate had used her. Exploited her. It didn't change what she did, but it made everything more complicated. I thanked Michelle. She offered to speak to my lawyer if needed. Then she said, "I'm sorry this happened to you. He fooled me too." When we hung up, I sat on the porch in the cold, trying to make sense of it all. The woman who left me had been cheating. Lying. But now I saw someone else's fingerprints all over the wreckage. It didn't absolve her, but it reminded me that betrayal is rarely simple. She came back in spring. I hadn't expected to see her again, not after the letter, not after the video, not after everything. But there she was, standing at the edge of the dock behind the cabin, looking out over the lake where we used to dream of owning a home. She didn't say anything. She held a letter in her hand, the paper curled at the edges like she'd been gripping it too tight. I didn't ask why she came. I didn't tell her to leave. I just sat beside her on the bench, watching the water ripple under a pale blue sky. We didn't speak for a long time. Birds sang in the trees. The world moved on like it always does, uncaring and beautiful. Eventually, she placed the letter beside me and stood. I didn't look at it right away. She whispered, "I'm not here to ask for anything. Just to let you know I'm trying to be someone better. For me." I nodded. That was all. She walked away without looking back. When I opened the letter, her handwriting filled both sides of the page. She wrote about therapy, about disconnecting from everything, social media, her old job, her friends who enabled the lies. She said she was living in a smaller city now. Quiet. Unnoticed. "I destroyed something sacred," she wrote. "Not just you. Not just us. But the version of myself I once loved. I hope one day you find someone who treats your heart like it matters. Because it does. It always did." I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. Then I sat there watching the lake. She hadn't asked for forgiveness. And I didn't offer it. But in that silence, there was something close to peace. A life once shattered, now settling into stillness. And for the first time, I didn't feel broken. I just felt free.